Good morning, and you're most welcome to the program, The Mid-Morning Pack. You're watching your favorite channel, MBCI TV. This is your weekly show every Wednesday from 10:30 to 12, where we discuss weighty matters, critical issues in the country, trying to make sense of them, trying to navigate through them, and also finding solutions so that we can have the country taking the right direction. We're so glad that you found time to be with us. Now, today, Kagi is not with me, but of course, I have prepared for you a very, very candid discussion and also an able panel to help us look at today's topic, as we always do every Wednesday. Karibu sana. Now, our topic for today is a very interesting topic, and of course, this is what has actually been making headlines recently, and we want to have a discussion on the talks, or on the resumption of mediation talks between the government and the opposition. Now, these talks had collapsed, and then there have been efforts to have the new or the fresh round of these particular talks. Now, we want to find out what is the agenda this time round, what are the issues that are supposed to be looked into, and we also look at why do we really need this particular talk in this particular country? Is it for the benefit of the common wananchi, or is it for the benefit of our leaders, or for that particular matter, the politicians? You're most welcome. And of course, we always give you an opportunity to interact with us in this particular discussion. There is a question that we've put out for you so that we can also get your contribution on the same. We're asking you, what would you want addressed in the talks between the government and the opposition? What you as a Kenyan, you as a voter, you as Mwananchi, from wherever you're coming from in this particular republic, what are the issues that you want to be addressed in this particular talks between the government and the opposition? Begin to give us your views, your reflections. You know the drill. Catch us live on our Facebook page, that is MBCI TV, and also on our YouTube page, that is MBCI TV Official. Our SMS platform, the shortcut platform, is 23814. Drop a comment or two as we continue with our discussion. Of course, we'll be glad to also get some of your opinions on the same. Now, my guest for today, I have a very able panelist, and on my right is Bwana Ben Gadhogo. He's a political analyst. Karibu sana, good to have you in this particular show today. Asante sana. And on my left is Masese Kemunche, is a governance expert and also the CEO, Center for Enhancing Democracy and Good Governance. Karibu sana, Bwana Masese Kemunche.
Thank you so much, Magicha.
Asanteni sana, and we are looking forward to have a very interesting conversation on today's discussion. But before we get into that, maybe I just want to get your opinions very, very briefly on what has been making headlines across this particular 1 week. There are quite a number of issues other than the mediation talks. Of course, that is what we'll get into in details. But there are three or maybe around two subjects that I would like to get your views. One is the transfer of judges that was done yesterday. Now, quite a number of judges have been transferred. Is it just the normal transfer, or maybe do you think it has been occasioned maybe by political issues? And of course, I'd also want to get your opinions on, there is a statement that the IG, Joseph Koome, the IG of police, released yesterday during an interview in Nyeri, whereby he said that some of the bodies that have been shown allegedly being as a result of police gunshots, he actually denied and said, or actually put it, that this could be a case of where some of the politicians have colluded with some of the morgues to be able to show some of the bodies, and not necessarily, or maybe those bodies were not really as a result of the gunshots during the Maandamano. What are some of your quick views on that? Let me start with Bwana Masese.
Thank you, Magicho. I think I'll start with the unfortunate statement by the Inspector General of the Police.
Yes.
I call it unfortunate, but there are two angles to it. One, it's an admission that the police actually shot protesters. Yeah, and so the question would want him to answer is how many? Yeah, is how many did the police kill?
Why do you say it's an admission?
It's an admission because if he's saying that politicians are hiring bodies from morgues, yeah, and he's saying some of the bodies, the connotation is there are those that the police killed, What he appears to be disagreeing with is the number.
Okay.
So the question I would pose to the Inspector General of the Police is, how many Kenyans or how many protesters did the police kill? That to me is the more substantive question.
Okay.
These other side shows are of less importance to me, and I guess to many Kenyans. The Inspector General essentially is not denying that the police used brutal force. The Inspector General is not denying
they were justified.
Brutal force by bearers of arms against individuals who are not armed cannot be justified anywhere. We are not saying, or personally I'm not saying, that I am endorsing the violence. I'm not saying that I'm supporting the violent protests. But I cannot agree with the Inspector General of Police when he says that police are justified to use arms the way they did. So perhaps what Inspector General of Police should tell us.
Are you not agreeing with him that the police might have been confronted with a situation where
we saw the media did a good job of showing us. African Uncensored, for example, has shown us police in civilian clothes shooting at people, targeted individuals. Social media is awash with clips of these police excesses. But we also saw protesters who robbed people. Here in Nakuru, for example, we saw protesters who, we cannot even call them protesters actually, because in the first place, we do not see clear leadership. We do not see any of the political sides coming out. So people believe that those who were actually not protesters, but people who took advantage of the protest to visit upon Kenyans' violence. So there were situations that if I wasn't a policeman and someone is confronting me with a panga, for example, I didn't see that, but if such incidents were to happen, then you would say the police person at that point did not have an option. But here are situations where we see police cornering individuals in dark alleys, corroborating them, and even shooting them. That cannot be justified.
Let me get the view of my second guest, that is Bwana Ben Gadhogo, on this. What do you make of Kome's statement?
My view is that those comments were unfortunate, coming in the wake of what we witnessed. I was one of the protesters, and there was a lot of police brutality, just sheer police brutality. If you take like the case of Nairobi, what happened is they besieged the protesters where the protesters stay, and refused the protesters to come out and express themselves. So instead of it becoming either a demonstration or a protest, it became a war between protesters and the police. And then the people who are not protesting became victims of a war between the police and, can we say, the protesters who are now rioting.
But do you think he has some evidence?
But he completely has no evidence. We visited some of the victims. Personally, I visited some of the victims. Like the case of one protester in Kaptembwa, here in Nakuru. The man left his home to go and work. He was a cobbler. So when the situation became tense and unbearable or conducive for business, he decided to go back home. While going back home is when he met the police and also his fate. He was just shot. The police were actually now shooting people indiscriminately, whether you are protesting or whether you are not protesting. They were like clearing the roads and expecting people to go back home. So when we hear the police, the Inspector General of Police try to justify what happens, is to bury the truth, is to be complacent, is to ensure that there will be a lot of fear next time when protests are called. And I think that is what he wants to instill, that actually people are dying and it is very long to protest. And we find it from the highest echelon of governance, the president, saying there will be no more maandamano. But yet, Article 37 is very clear that there is freedom to protest, to picket.
Yeah, but apparently in Kenya, we don't have people who demonstrate peacefully.
They do. I was one of the demonstrators. Look at me. Am I violent? Do I even have the capacity to be violent?
Maybe that is just you. So
no. So many.
And actually, Masesa just told us that in Nakuru, we didn't see protesters. We actually saw goons going into people's house, robbing them, and also committing other atrocities.
If we were, we need to put everything into context. What is the nature of protests that we recently witnessed? Who were the organizers? What was the purpose? What were the objectives? If you look at the fact that these protests were called by politicians that are opposed to the government of the day, then you realize that there's political competition. And if political competition is the core issue, then it becomes a bit difficult to control the direction.
So when we talk about political competition, are we saying that the protests were not formed on maybe solid basis or solid issues?
If and when, and I pray that day comes, when Kenyans get truly tired of the situation, maandamano will not be controlled. They will be unstoppable. We've witnessed what happened in other countries. Who would have known that Hosni Mubarak would be evicted from office? I mean, if and when Kenyans feel that they've been pushed to the wall and they have no exit, such protests would be genuine, But presently, and I think this is what I was saying, there are those people who feel that this is between Raila and Ruto. Yeah? Cost of living, yes, is going high. But again, the level of mobilization has not taken root to the extent that Kenyans would come out on their own volition, spontaneously, to demand action by government.
Without necessarily
being mobilized by anyone. It's called organic action by Kenyans. Right. We were there during the constitution making process. I'm part of the history of making the constitution of Kenya. And when push became shove, we were unstoppable. I remember a time when over 100 of us got confined in a compound, and we voluntarily got ourselves into police vehicles. We went to prisons without passing through police stations, and we were singing and agitating. So right now what we are faced with, actually, we are not very far away from where we were in the 90s. It's just a matter of time before you see the academia, the businesses, before you see civil society, everyone joining in to demand for government action against very critical issues that perhaps we'll be discussing here, including the cost of living, impunity that is taking root, the debt crisis, the lack of accountability in utilization of public resources. These are issues that touch every Kenyan, regardless to whether you are, as they say, Murara Hoi or Murara Eri. Truth be said, the state sometimes creates conditions that then make it necessary for people to take action. As we now speak, the conditions that the state has created are making it necessary by day for civic action by Kenyans.
By Kenyans, okay. let me get your view, Bwana, because I want us now to get into the details, the nitty-gritties of our discussion on resumption of mediation talks. But briefly, those who maybe found themselves being victims of police brutality, excessive force, are they likely to get justice?
Yeah, they are likely to get justice in that, as my brother Masese is saying, we are imploding on the civil society. we are imploring on the churches to come out and join in agitating for certain things, one of which is, number one, the right to life. It is one of the things that was very controversial during the constitution-making process, but people are only talking about abortion. But what is the worth of a Kenyan life? Who died? It's not the middle class who died. It's not somebody who prominent who died, and that's why there's a hush-hush about it.
What is the road like to making them find this particular justice?
Yeah, that's what we are saying. We're in the process of gathering profiles of those who died, and presenting it to civil societies and to government to ensure that justice is done. So that we don't have a situation whereby next time when people are called to go and protest, they will say, I fear for my life. Because unless we do away with Article 37, there will always be protests, there will always be demonstrations. Right. They can even demonstration against demonstrations. Okay. We don't deny that. But we should not have a situation whereby you cannot demonstrate for any injustice that you see.
Fair enough.
Because our constitution gives us the right to do certain things. Okay. It removed power from the state into us as individuals, into us as Kenyans, to protect, to defend, and promote the constitution.
And promote the constitution. Fair enough, Bwana Gadhogo. Briefly, Bwana Masese, before we get now into our topic, but on the transfer of judges, last night, did you read too much into it, or it just execution of?
It's fair enough. I would say it's normal for judges to be
because transferred. Some of the judges that were transferred, apparently, some people think that they had made some rulings.
It's normal for the judges to be transferred. Yes. It's basic administrative processes, but when you put things into perspective, that's why context is very important. Who are these judges being taken away from the center? And when I'm saying the center, I am aware justice can be dispensed anywhere, from any corner in this country.
Right.
It doesn't matter where. But then there are certain strategic courts where specific matters find their way. Like around this time where people are agitating for reforms for a number of issues, Nairobi becomes the core place, the center place where a lot of petitions, judicial petitions would be happening.
Right.
And so when you see certain judges who are on record to have made rulings that might not appear to be quite positive on the part of government, being taken away from the center,
right,
then one begins to read mischief. Yeah, okay. But our judiciary over time had become quite strong. Those of us in the civil society sector, actually, we see the judiciary as our allies. So we've seen some rulings they have made that are quite progressive in terms of allowing us the space that we need to continue pushing for greater accountability by government. So we can only hope that even with these transfers, even with these reshuffles, the judiciary will keep the momentum. We are a bit perturbed when the latest ruling first by the Court of Appeal and the refusal to vacate that ruling by the Court of Appeal about the finance bill. It's one ruling that, it's one matter that concerns us. Because we are talking about high cost of living, and we are seeing government keen to milk the cow that is actually withering, and that might not sit well. And those are some of the things that will make Kenyans opt to streets. Ben, it's not, if the right things were to be done, yeah, we will complain about issues. You remember when Obama came to Kenya, one of the poignant statements he made is that in a democracy, people will always complain about something. We will always complain about things, but the approach we will take might be different. And if, for example, we had been keen to fix the long-standing issues identified by the national dialogue, by now, would just be complaining and perhaps sitting down to talk to each other and sometimes at each other. Wouldn't be having situations where people are being crowded in the streets, police are being stoned by Kenyans. Wouldn't be having such a situation. It's not something that makes us proud to be Kenyan. Would wish to have open space where the duty bearer listens to the right order. Would wish to have a situation where Kenyans are first and foremost patriotic. They are concerned about where their country is going. Not now where we are having sentiments like, Penya tumefika, we just need to dismantle everything, we'll begin afresh.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe, Bwana Gadhogo, you can pick up from where Masese has left, because we're talking about resumption of these mediation talks, and some Kenyans are quite jittery about these and wondering, we have an election, we have the winner declared, and then we are forced into talks which we really do not necessarily see why they should be important, because we have the government that is there, which is supposed to work for its people for 5 years, then we have another election.
But there's no guarantee for 5 years, first of all. And winning an election does not mean that you own us, you own Kenya. It just gives you an opportunity to serve. And if at any time within the 5 years we feel that things are not going right, we have a right to complain. We have a right to present petition. That is why Article 37 is profound. It just does not say that you go out to the streets, demonstrate, destroy properties or stuff, but it says you also present petitions. You also present to government or to the people who are in government petitions, and you tell them this is what you want done. Secondly, there is this misconception that in Kenya we have a government and we have an opposition. We don't. Actually, we have...
You don't have an opposition?
No, we don't.
You have majority
Under this constitution, we have only majority and minorities. All of those folks are in government. All of them are in government. So the moment you think that so-and-so is outside government and so is inside government, you begin getting it wrong. If we're in a parliamentary system of government, we would have opposition and we have government. But so long as it's a presidential system, you only have majority and minority. Secondly, some of the issues are profound, because whether, quote unquote, I'm in the opposition, I'm paying taxes. It's my right as a Kenyan to know how my taxes are being used. Or else we end up where unfortunately, the deputy president says some of us have more shares than others, but he still expects me, who is not a shareholder, to give him taxes. You know, it's a bit logic that you are not a shareholder and you are labeled as such, but you want my taxes. You know, if you want my taxes, then I automatically become a shareholder.
You automatically become a shareholder. But Bwana says, is there a problem? Do you think we have a problem to necessitate some of these particular talks? Or are we being taken for a ride by those who are in the leadership?
Mangicho, perhaps that's the most important conversation we need to have. Yes, we have a problem, actually a big problem. If you recall, in 2008, we had politically instigated ethnic clashes. We lost so many people, property worth billions were destroyed. Our fabric as a nation was really, really tested. We are lucky to have survived 2007, 2008, was the election violence. We embarked on a process to restore normalcy. We embarked on a process to salvage our country.
That's even why we came up with the new constitution.
That's why we have the new constitution that was a key target under the fourth agenda of the national dialogue and the reconciliation.
And this constitution solved this problem?
Now,
or it did?
The constitution was meant to solve many problems. The greatest of them being to tackle accountability by ensuring, to tackle impunity by ensuring accountability, by ensuring accountable governance. Unfortunately, and I don't know why, as Kenyans, we keep doing this time and again. The people we entrusted to implement the Constitution were opposed to the Constitution in the first place. So the big problem we have now is that we are drifting away from the constitutional dream. We are not pursuing the Constitution. We are not pursuing constitutionalism. We have a great deal of impunity. Just check. We have an election, people win on different political parties. Then the person who has won as president spends money to buy members of parliament who are the one to join him, to create an illusion that he has a majority. And when Ben says that being a president does not mean you own us, now being president in Kenya means you own politicians. That's what has happened. So that's why parliament has become dysfunctional. We do not have a legislature that meets the bill, the constitutional demands of a legislature.
But there is a way in which constitution envisaged.
There's a clear, very clear constitutional vision. We wanted to have a parliament that is truly independent. The constitution envisioned a parliament that would be effective and efficient in delivery of its oversight mandate.
A parliament that is not an extension of the
executive. Parliament that is not a puppet, so to speak, of the executive. But that's not what we have. Mangicho, if you look at our history, and someone was sharing with us this yesterday, the political capital over the years is the politicians are not having options. At first, when Kenyatta became president, he had the land to dish out. Yeah? When Moi became president, some land was available for him to dish out, but then state corporations became the new capital. That's why we had things like Nyayo T-zones, what have we. So that if you danced to the tune, you'd become a big person in any of those state corporations, and then you could steal for yourself and your family and your community, quote and unquote. Kibaki became president, there was not much really to be dished out, and this is the point where we started having things like privatization, and you realize that's when we had so many universities in rooftops, upper puff bars in towns. It focused so much, and then Uhuru became president, debt, borrowing, borrowing. So you can borrow money without securing the money so that anyone can steal it. Ruto is president, he has some capital in borrowing, not much, but is now moving towards calling public-private partnerships. And because he does not have money in public, to build houses, is making you to pay some money so that that money is made available to some public individual, private individual, you get. So if you look at all these things, the constitutional aspirations were such that Kenyans would reap the benefits of their labor. Presently, are Kenyans reaping the benefits of their labor? They are not. So we have a big problem of impunity that is getting entrenched. Corruption is a huge, huge problem. You realize every single day our debt keeps ballooning. But where is the value of the money we are borrowing? Is it not the time for Kenyans to have a national dialogue on the debt burden? So we have a problem.
We have a problem. I'm coming back to you, Bwana Masese. He's quite given us a few points that are very critical, Bwana Gazogo. Therefore, when you look at this particular, because this is a journey that, like he's rightly put it, 2007, 2008, this calls for dialogue and how crucial they are. An example of what he has actually even said are some of the members of parliament being elected on a particular party, and once the win of the presidential election is announced, they cross to the other side. Now, we are wondering, so is it really a matter of inclusivity, feeling that you are not in government?
Yeah, he really presented the historical Kenyan journey
Yes.
to where we are now, which is critical because sometimes we do forget history. But there's a point that I wanted also to stress, that where did we lose?
Okay.
After even getting that new constitution, we lost it in 2012, 2013, when we lost chapter 6. Because who are those people in parliament? Leave alone crossing. Who are they? What kind of character do they possess?
How do they find themselves there?
Yeah, because number one, being elected does not mean you've been baptized. You know, like when you have been baptized, you are born again. And there's that assumption that when you are born again, there are certain things you cannot be able to do. But in Kenya, who do we vote in? If we were to take the profiles of those people who are in power, parliamentarians, what kind of character or shades do they portray?
So the problem is not even with
Among their characters,
those who are elected.
their characters even before getting it to parliament.
Yeah.
What kind of individuals are there? You are going to get rapists. You are going to get people who have been accused of murder. You are going to get people who have been accused of economic sabotage. People who have stolen from the public. Okay. People of all, you know, anything that is bad and evil in this republic. So when we entrust them with leadership, what do we expect? The Swahili say, mpiripiri hauzai mchikicho. Because if it is mpiripiri, you expect mpiripiri. So when we, first of all, want to correct everything in Kenya, we must go back to chapter 6. Because it was, as he said, the centerpiece of the people we be entrusting governance.
So is it,
but if we,
is it a matter of enforcing it? Is it that Kenyans are not aware about it?
Yeah, we lost it in 2012. Yeah. So until now, we go back and say, this is where the rain started beating us. Okay. I mean, you cannot have all criminals in parliament and you expect you are going to get at people who will not, at the just snap of a finger, jumping from one party to another.
Sorry, I feel like I just need to jump in at that point. You know what devolution was supposed to do? Devolution was supposed to narrow the gap between the rich and the poor. This devolution was supposed to make Kenya a more equitable country. Now, since 2013, what are we seeing? Less and less investments is being made. You know, the challenge of leadership. We get it right because majority of Kenyans are, we get it wrong because majority of Kenyans are poor. And so, government has made it the objective to keep us poor, or even poorer, so that then they are able to buy us more cheaply.
They're able to buy us more cheaply. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want us to get some vox pops from our reporter, that is Vincent Kimutai. We always have this particular segment whereby our reporter gets to the streets and interacts with Kenyans to also get some of their opinions, some of their perspectives on the subject of our discussion. And of course, today, Vincent Kimutai is also asking Kenyans what they think about this particular resumption of mediation talks. What is it that Kenyans want to be included when the government and the opposition team meet or converge? Vincent Kimutai, take it away.
Mwangicho Mola, mazungumzo ya bipartisan baina ya Kenya Kwanza na Azimio la Umoja yanaanza leo Jumatano katika ukumbi wa Bomas of Kenya kutafuta suluhu ya mzozo baina ya serikali na upinzani ambayo imekuwa ikiendelea kwa muda mrefu sasa. Kiongozi wengi katika bunge la kitaifa Kimani Ichung'wah siku ya Jumatano alisema kuwa mazungumzo hayo yatafanyika katika ukumbi wa Bomas of Kenya hii leo na itaanza mwendo wa saa 5:30. Hata hivyo, kumekuwa na msimamo mkali kutoka pande zote mbili, pande ya Azimio la Umoja, pande ya Kenya Kwanza, ambapo kila mmoja anaeleza kile ambacho anataka yakaweza kuhusishwa katika mazungumzo hayo. Pande zote mbili wameweza kuelewana kuhusiana na masuala kadhaa isipokuwa gharama ya maisha na ukaguzi wa matokeo ya uchaguzi wa mwaka uliopita. Ni leo hapo tutakuwa tukizungumza na Wakenya kutaka kufahamu, je, wao wanaona mazungumzo ambayo yanaanza leo yataweza kuzaa matunda, yakizingatiwa mazungumzo kadhaa yameweza kugonga mwamba kwa viongozi wao kosa kuelewana.
Naitwa Elijah, na kuhusiana na mazungumzo naamini wataelewana kwa sababu viongozi ndio vinara vyetu. Kwa hivyo wakielewana kila kitu itakuwa sawa sawa. Au mwito wangu ni kwamba ningependa wote waelewane kwa sababu hawa ndio watafanya sisi tuelewane na maisha yatakuwa mazuri. Bila wao kuelewana kutakuwa na matatizo. Kwa hivyo waelewane ndipo tuweze kupata nafasi ya kuendelea na kazi zetu vizuri.
Do you think the talks between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio will succeed?
Yes, my name is Joseph Odongo. To me, I don't think that the talks between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio will succeed because of the interests that the two parties have. I'm seeing, for me, as a Kenyan, we are feeling it. Maybe I'm being relaxed. Your political.
Sikisane sikisane tu na maongeo mzuri. Gharama ya maisha tu sukishe chini kidogo.
Majina naitwa Simon Macharia.
Mazungumzo ya Jumatano baina ya serikali na upinzani, unafikiri yatazama?
Kwa majina najulikana kama Manoti Isaac. Mimi ni mwanahabari hapa, mwanahabari wa kujitegemea hapa mjini Nakuru, na haya mazungumzo ambayo ataweza kufanyika siku Jumatano baina ya Kenya Kwanza na upande wa upinzani ambayo inaongozwa na kinara ama
I'm being told that there is a technical hitch with that particular report from our reporter Vincent Kimutai. Just moving ahead with my guest, Bwana Gadhogo, because one of the things that, and as you've rightly put, if these are talks about Kenyans, the shape that they normally take, like if you are seeing what we are seeing at the moment, those who are in these particular talks are basically politicians. Is this the way it should go?
Yeah, because under normal circumstances, politicians are the bearers of the people's aspiration. That's the way it should have been. But
unfortunately, they don't bear those aspirations.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes their interest, and that's why we are calling for a broader representation. Okay. Maybe people from the religious organization and civil society initially. But when it became that it must go through parliament, that's why you find the...
But it's like the voices of these religious institutions, civil society.
That's why we are saying...
That they've not been loud enough to be incorporated?
They have not, and they have taken side. A lot of them really took side during the campaigns. And therefore, they are not viewed as neutral, and they are not viewed as representing that neutrality. That point where we would say these ones are the sensible people in that committee. Therefore, what are we left with? We are left with, the people who are hawks of various of the two sides, who may not have the ability in politics that is very important, the ability to compromise. Okay. Because governance is about compromise at that level, where you can say give or take this for the greater good of the country. But we are seeing people who are very myopic, just for my party, and sometimes not even for my party, just for the little group that I do represent. That's why I am there.
Fair enough, Bwana Gadhogo. I'll be coming back again to you because in terms of representation, I must say, and you come from the civil society, what happened to the strong voice from the civil society? Because so many Kenyans are worried that if this is left at the hands of the politicians, there is a lot of suspicions that this is for their own interest. And some people are actually even quoting that some leaders had wanted, I don't know, 40,000. Maybe they are just allegations as per allowance. We have the side of the government saying, no, we want these talks to be in an open place, and the government does not have a budget maybe for this kind of an activity.
Very well. the civil society is active and pretty robust. I think perhaps it may not be compared with the civil society of the 90s because circumstances have changed and the issues have shifted. You recall during the 90s we wanted to get a dictatorial regime out of power, and therefore civil society, academia, the religious community, civil society general, because even the church is part of civil society, was quite active, quite visible. We gave ourselves a new constitution that placed, confines within which those in power should operate. Believe me, if we didn't have this new constitution, the route of presidency would be something else. This new constitution is stopping him from doing certain things that he would have wished it to do. Now, there is an ongoing conversation. There is an active conversation we are having and an agenda we call Kenya Pora Tuitakayo. We are developing a clear roadmap for engaging Kenyans so that, like I saw one of the persons that came, made a comment, the Elijah, is saying that if the politicians agree, they will unite us. I find that quite worrying, considering that Article 1 of the Constitution says the sovereign powers belong to the people. Are we able to unite ourselves? Are we able to set an agenda? So the goal of Kenya Pora Tuitakayo is to shift the conversation from the politicians to Kenyans, so that we begin to frame the issues that really matter, so that they become the basis for the demands we make to the politicians. If you recall, during the POMAS talks, prior to the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, establishment of the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, and even afterwards, the POMAS agenda was the people's agenda. I mean, not just the POMAS, the Ufungamano. The Ufungamano agenda was the people's agenda. And that's what informed, what ensued in POMAS and subsequently the journey that was hijacked by the Kibaki Raila handshake, Nusumkate government. But be that as it may, today civil society is not going to be very prominent, very visible. Why? These issues being placed on their table, by the way, there should be 6 issues to be discussed in POMAS by these bipartisan talks. They are talking about cost of living, but Kenya Kwanza says that should not be discussed. Then there is the reconstitution of independent electoral and boundaries commission. Quite an important issue, but the leaning is towards politics, largely. Then implementation of the 230 tender rule, an important issue to Kenyans. But there is another one, entrenchment of Constituency Development Fund. The organization I lead and another organization went to court since 2013 until last year, when the Supreme Court finally made a ruling declaring CDF unconstitutional. Why do we think CDF should not exist and operate the way it does? Is because we have an elaborate governance system that has assigned responsibilities to 2 levels of government, the national government and the county government. Devolution and physical resources as a principle follow functions. So what are these unique functions that cannot be attended to within these 2 levels of government? And I invite you to read the ruling by the Supreme Court. Now, they are sneaking in this agenda because they know for sure this is the unifying agenda, because it directly affects their interests. The parliamentarians in Kenya Kwanza and the parliamentarians in Azimio, Azimio is also, there's a Kwanza in Azimio, one Kenya Alliance, they will unite because the CDF money is the money they use for campaigns. So if this were to be framed as an issue from where we sit, is how do we implement the Supreme Court ruling? Not how do we save, how do we salvage CDF or National Government Constituencies Development Fund. We don't need that money. we need that money to go to ministries or to county governments so that then parliamentarians can focus on the work we gave them to do. And that work should be oversight utilization of public resources. Now, tell me again,
Yes.
how establishment and entrenchment of office of the leader of opposition and embedment of the office of prime minister necessary and important as an issue right now. Already, the president established this office, yeah, against the constitutional demands. Penny said we are a presidential system, not a parliamentary system. If they wanted to change the structure of government, then let them come back to us, because that requires a referendum. Why is it a political issue to be discussed only by politicians?
Let me get to the views of Bwana. Listening to this point, and do you think they make a mockery of the intelligence of Kenyans? And is this really what
Actually,
is really very, very critical at the moment?
There are only two issues.
Yes.
The cost of living and the audit of the 2022 general election. And the audit, what do you want, how do you want our election in future to be? Like, do we have every time there is a general election, there is a crisis before and after? Or we want it to be an exercise, a democratic exercise, where the people freely expresses their franchise without fear or favor and give us the best officials.
And do we need even to audit those elections? Because
we do.
We had the final say from the Supreme Court.
We do, because it's a constitutional matter.
Is
Is it
not casting aspersions?
No. We are saying that our elections should be accountable, transparent, and we are saying even years when you come back, you are going to find out that Masese beat Ben by 2 or 3 votes. So there's nothing wrong in auditing. There's not, in fact, there's something all the wrong in not auditing. Because we don't want every time we have an election, it must end at the Supreme Court.
Right.
We had a situation where somebody stands and say, we did our best, but we lost because of this and this platform.
Which some people think that it is actually misbehavior or unbecoming behavior from the politicians.
It is the right.
Especially at the presidential level.
Because we are giving you over 3 trillion for you to be in charge of. We really want to know, do you even deserve it? Did you even win? So every time, like the president say, we are not talking about servers, we are not going to talk about election, that is self-defeatist. Because if you really won, the easiest way is to open the server. The easiest way is to say, come, I show that I actually got the people mandate. What is so difficult in that? In saying, this is the server, this is everything, and it is open for everybody to come and scrutinize. What is being hidden? So that is a number 1 topic for me. But the most important is the cost of living. Things are bad. Things are bananas, as they say. Because, like, let me just quickly go through what has been happening.
Okay.
The first thing is, like, now government debts just got a little bit more expensive. I don't know about whether you are aware of this organization that is called Fitch, that actually fixes governments and say this government is secure to borrow and this one is not. Actually, it just placed Kenya from what we call, just a normal country that can borrow and take, to B, meaning from A, we've just been taken to B. We can only borrow now our money more expensive than the rest. Okay. Meaning, we are almost defaulters. We are almost becoming defaulters. And if you look at our maths, they simply don't add up. Because the shilling yesterday, to buy the dollar was 148.
And remember, these are big problems that we
inherited from the big problem.
We inherited hugely from
the
previous government.
No problem, because you become in charge. You don't go for a job and say the previous manager actually did not do this and this.
And that is all the...
Once you become the manager, you take it from there. And we saw it from Kibaki. Kibaki inherited a mess. You know, a complete mess. And from the mess, Kibaki 10 years left a country that was functional, a country that respected human rights, a country that was economically stable, because like now we are almost now dependent on IMF. IMF in the world, show me one country they have been able to develop. IMF is like going to a Shylock. It's like a businessman now learning away from banks and saying the Shylocks are better. They have never developed any country. They are not just about to develop any, and that's why they come with these stringent conditions the same way as Shylocks.
Fair enough.
One of the things that they have come up with is the increase of fuel from 8% to 16%. What does that do to the mama who was saying we lower the cost of living? It just ensures that that cost of living is not just about to come down any time soon. We also have the cost of power.
Yes.
Now, if you are manufacturing, if you wanted to strengthen the shilling, you must export more. And there's no other way. You must export more so that you get the hard currency, so that your shilling become stronger. Now, tell me, you make the cost of production high. You make the cost of transport high. How are you going to bring the cost of living?
But we have subsidized fertilizer.
Yeah?
Subsidized fertilizer.
That's only about food.
Okay.
The government, yeah, you've asked a very important question. The government major role is on macroeconomic conditions, not microeconomic conditions. Yes. Like you planted 2 plots of maize, and then you take a picture and say, I've just brought the cost of living. Because even the cost of transporting that fertilizer is also a factor of production.
Okay. Bwana Masese, Bwana Gadhaga is actually bringing out a very strong point. Now, we have Kenya Kwanza saying that the issue of cost of living should not be on the table, apparently because they are in the driver's seat. The issue of elections, when you talk about auditing 2022 elections, and apparently this particular side of the government also maybe making it making it categorical that this is something that was brought to a closure by the Supreme Court. So how does it even make the starting of these particular talks look like?
If I'm not wrong, the audit of 2022 elections has actually been done by the Election Management Body, IEBC.
Okay.
You understand the election cycle, how it works. Elections are cycle. Every single day there is something happening about elections. That's why IEBC is a permanent commission. Yeah, they are not just conducting elections on the second Tuesday.
But they've not opened the server as the opposition wants.
Now, the question to ask is what kind of audit, the scope, the depth of audit was anticipated. I think, you see, looking at systems, looking at processes, looking at actors, constitutes the audit. The primary question to ask is that what did we get right in the manner in which we conducted the 2022 elections? What perhaps did we not get right that requires us to fix? And there are so many issues. So the whole idea of reconstituting IEBC is that IEBC, the commissioners, have got fixed terms. The current members of the commission, their terms, most of them came to an end, if not all. So therefore, there is a process laid down by law.
Right.
And the political parties have got a role to play. So I think the question of reconstituting IEBC is a conversation that should be held at this time. Now, perhaps what I would agree with Ben is that the audit process should have been more elaborate, more participatory, more involving, yeah, so that as many Kenyans get to know about it and get to participate,
right,
so that their views can be taken care of moving forward. But again, we have spaces for that kind of engagement. the opening of the server and such like, there's this school of thought that that happened during the Supreme Court process, that there are people who were invited to see what was in that server. But if you asked me, a substantive audit question or concern that we should have as far as election management in this country is concerned is the role of technology in elections. Role of technology to include who should have ownership, access and control of the technology.
I want to get your opinion because we are running short of time.
Yes.
Your opinion on the exclusion of the cost of living.
That's unfortunate. In fact, if I were to prioritize, there are two issues. Cost of living, stroke, the 2023 Finance Act. In fact, cost of living cannot be discussed without discussing the act. So if Kimani Ichung'wah is not comfortable with the cost of living, then we can limit it to discussing how do we fix the issues Kenyans have raised about this act. And the pen has enumerated quite a number of them. That's what matters to us right now, reducing the cost of living. Yeah? Securing Kenyans, cushioning Kenyans, because truth be said, many marriages are breaking as we speak. True. There's a lot of violence, gender-based violence, as a result of the high cost of living. You go home, your wife expects you to carry bread. You don't have bread. She will ask you a question, you are frustrated, you end up becoming physical. And that's really, you know, there are so many multiple effects of the current state of affairs that our leaders should talk about. And so cost of living should be included in their table. On top of it, on the list should be.
And you're not of the view that the measures the government is putting into place, maybe they're quite long term.
The thing is,
maybe at the moment,
the thing is, I agree. There are certain things that I agree with the proposals by government, but you see, there is an assurance we don't have coming from government. That assurance is they will tackle corruption and leakages of revenue. You know, if we were assured that tunajikaza kamba, you know, it's called delayed gratification, that we reserve for some time, but then the problems will be fixed.
We have some assurance.
That's a difference. We don't have any assurance if
the president the other day,
there are new scandals.
In the cabinet performance contract signing,
let me ask you.
He pointed out to a lady.
Let me ask you. What value do we have slaughtering cows and feeding people in Sagana House? Yeah. When we talk about austerity measures,
that is a promise that had been made by the deputy president.
To what end? How does it address the problem? One day, one plate of rice and nyama on one day, does it make people satisfied for eternity? Yeah?
But in 1 minute, the political goodwill between the two camps.
First of all,
even preceding this particular talks, the kind of language you hear from opposition leaders, the kind of language you hear from the governmental leaders, not very, very pleasing.
Before I even answer that, I wanted to say things are even more thick when you consider that for every shilling
for
every shilling that is corrected, 50 cents goes towards paying debt. And the debt is even growing bigger because this month, we ought to be paying money for the standard gauge. This month. This
August.
And in June, we'll be paying for the Eurobond. So things are not about to get better. They are going to get worse. It's not what Matisese is saying at future gratification. There is none. Actually, things are going to get...
By 2026, you don't think?
No. Things are going to get worse.
Some people will say you are pessimistic.
If they ever get to...
Yes, going by the figures.
If they get better, it's because we shall have arrested runaway corruption.
Which is 30%.
If they get better, it's because we shall have arrested wastage in government.
True.
If they get better, it's because we shall have tamed the greed of our leaders.
Yeah.
If they get better.
Yeah. And also your question that you've said about the political goodwill.
Yes.
Yeah, there is no political goodwill when one leader stands up and say, you know, these talks, we are just going to take them round and round and eventually we are not interested. So political goodwill is not there, but we just hope as they sit down, the Holy Spirit may come upon them so that they view the task that have been given before them as that heavy.
In terms of the composition, of the members, there are those who are saying that they're not rhyming.
The problem in Kenya is not capacity.
One particular side has hardliners, the other side has diplomats.
The problem in this country has never been capacity. The problem with this country has always been integrity. Yeah.
Okay.
So capacity, all of them have the capacity. All of them are graduates. All of them have been to these very prestigious schools. But do they have integrity? That is.
That's a very strong point, integrity. So, well, these talks might help us at least deal with the heat of the moment. If you recall, Agenda 1 in the National Dialogue was ending violence. Cessation of violence. So these talks, if they help us achieve that so that people can do their businesses and continue with their daily struggles,
are there likelihood of those who are in a position to get into government? Are you suspicious?
If history is anything to go by, it will end up in a handshake and a handshake.
Would they have betrayed Kenyans?
Great betrayal. It's not the first time we'll be betrayed. It's like now we are used to, unfortunately. But my parting shot is Kenya pora tuitakayo.
Because you come from the opposition, is that what you want to do?
No.
Are you interested in getting into government?
We've stated it countless times. We are not interested in
nothing like handshake.
Government. No. We just want to be listened to offer expertise when it comes to some of these things.
Okay.
Because truth be said, a lot of the Kenya Kwanza people in government today are greenhorns. And there's nothing wrong in being greenhorns. Yeah.
You've got to bring it to a stop for today, but I really want to appreciate a very, very robust discussion here and our very able panelists helping us to look at some of these things from a very, very, very deep perspective. Bwana Masese Kimunche, governance expert and also the CEO, Center for Enhancing Democracy and Governance. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for making time for us at the Mid-Morning Park.
Thank you, Mangicho and MPCI, for having me, and thank you, listeners, for being part of the conversation.
Bwana Ben Gadogo, also a political analyst, it's been great having you in this particular discussion today.
Asante sana watazamaji. Pengine wakati mwingine tutaongea zaidi.
Of course, looking forward to have you again, even as we continue to unpack what is happening in the country and also enhancing and also advising you and also encouraging you also to be a keen follower of what is happening and also to contribute for the betterment of this particular society. On behalf of the entire crew that has made our program a success for today, we'll see you again next week at a time like this. My name is Mangicho.